Hi, it's Dan Harmon.
Megan Gans.
Joe Russo.
Joel McHale.
So this is my defensive, aggressive, offensive swipe at our competitors, our successful competitors, Modern Family, Parks and Rec, and The Office. They all use a style called mockumentary, which means you can jump cut, you can whip pan, you can do VO, you can have people addressing
Talking
the camera,
heads.
explaining jokes. It about triples the amount of jokes you're able to do per minute. So I'm a bitter asshole. I always go like, 30 Rock and Community never get a medal for doing one of the hardest things in the world, which is old school narrative TV with a fourth wall. People are always calling us meta and saying we're violating the fourth wall. All these shows are doing documentaries by mysterious crews that are there at their leisure. So, anyways,
But to your credit, though, this episode, the idea of the episode started first. We wrote the story, and then sort of towards the end of that, we were saying, oh, well, it would be nice if Abed was filming this as a
Right.
documentary. And
Actually, I
then,
think that was you in the writers' room.
because I had heard you mention that idea before, that you thought, oh, we could do a documentary, we could do a mockumentary episode. That would be so cool. We could show like how we can do this just as easy as anyone else. But it sort of fit perfectly with this particular storyline, because the only way that, like, we could never do these storylines otherwise, because you would have to know that Pierce was fucking with them.
Right.
And that moment, there's like, see, shooting ducks in a barrel.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
Yeah.
We just established more information than we're usually able to establish in any cold open, unless you count the Dungeons and Dragons epic Lord of the Rings voiceover, but because that's a similar thing. When you're able to just explain things, it's very easy to do layered, nuanced, grounded comedy. It's a lot harder to do like straight stories about people who also have to be funny 3 times a page.
And you can always say exactly what they're thinking, which is what I mean. I didn't even think about that until
the storyline with Troy, for instance, and LeVar Burton wouldn't have worked otherwise, because and that was the good thing, that we really, once we came around to the documentary angle, we tried to make the storylines such that they would be augmented by being able to have these talking heads and things. And the Troy storyline, the only reason it's funny is because we cut away to him explaining, I never really wanted to meet LeVar Burton. I always just wanted to see him in a photograph. And then you understand, oh, when he's being dead silent like that, he's going through a range of emotions, which you wouldn't understand had we just done like our normal style of episode.
Cool. I don't want Pierce to die. But
What else is interesting about mockumentary is that from an execution standpoint, it's actually a lot easier to execute than a standard episode of television. So, one thing that about Community is probably the hardest show I've ever worked on from a physical production standpoint, because we're constantly attacking different genres and styles every week, reinventing. It's a very ambitious show. Season 2 is about as ambitious as I can imagine a show getting, and still coming in remotely close to budget. But this is a very quick, facile way to execute. We shot this episode in 3.5 days. We talked about just lighting. This is all a set, this hospital set. And I said to the DP, I said, just light everything so we're ready to shoot. When we walk into a room, everything's sort of naturalistic. It should feel like available light. The windows should blow out. And that's the whole, sort of edict behind, or dogma behind mockumentary, is that it's supposed to feel as verite and realistic and voyeuristic as possible.
And you shot these with the same camera as the Sony EX3? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, we did these little Sony cameras, which they call them prosumer cameras, but they're basically consumer. You can go out and buy these cameras for about, $4 or $5 grand, and it's a great look.
Yeah, even having, I didn't notice this before, but in the mockumentary, you can have the camera literally, like, look at things. It'll pan down, it'll zoom in on something, and then you're telling the audience, hey, look at this. It's like force-feeding them the information they're supposed to get.
Yeah, to the audience, it's a slight cousin of what you're usually seeing, but in the edit bay and on the set, it couldn't be more different. And especially to me as a creator doing my cut in the edit bay, I'm normally, like Joe said, it's harder to do it the way we usually do it. I make it even harder because when I watch 30 Rock, I see allowance for standard kind of jump cuts. I like or what I call jump cuts that other people don't even call jump cuts, which is cutting from a master shot to a single from the same angle. Things that just I insist I make the editor okay, pull that out. We got to find better coverage and things like that, because I want the audience to feel like a fly in space that is popping to exactly where you unconsciously think you need to be to get the story told. And I don't want you to be conscious of the camera at all. So imagine all of those weights being taken off your ankles at once. And so this was, it's like 3.5 day shoot. And then it was like, I'm sure I shipped the cut, very quickly.
It was very quick.
The writing, actually, I felt like was really fun and easy too. I mean, we did some all-nighters on it, but you could tell there was like this energy because you really do just get to cram so many jokes in. I mean, you have these monologues like Britta's giving one right now, where you can just pack her full of jokes, and she's just addressing to the camera. You don't even have to have a dialogue back and forth with anyone.
Right.
I think we did it again. It's the style of shooting. I think we did this monologue about 14 times in about 5 minutes, and it just allows actors to work in a different way as well. And I think Gillian's excellent in this episode. She gives a really good performance.
This is my favorite scene coming up of the whole season, of Joel and Chevy having this tete-a-tete, this standoff where he absolutely knows, again, like something that we can do without the documentary format. Joel is so aware.
Yeah, it's so great. Like we always give the characters credit and the audience credit. So we go, Joel McHale has to know what the audience might know if they're all on. So he comes in knowing what's going on. And now you've got Pierce in the sort of Michael Scott role of being a little bit behind and having to figure out how his James Bondian plan that he's sort of improvised is going to come together. But
and just the love that Jeff's character clearly has, where he's just tolerating this man. Like, he's just going to let him go through the motions of, yeah, tell me what your present is. Like, let's hear it. It's just great.
And Chevy acting from a bed is just saved a lot of time.
Oh, he did a lot of physical work with the cup and the straw, drinking like a lot of, doing funny, hilarious drinking.
This scene is a good example of, this style of shooting. It's very behavioral. Joel can just walk into the room. There are no marks. He can move, sit wherever he wants to. Every take he moves differently. We have 3 different cameras going from 3 different angles on him, so you can capture different behavior. Nothing has to match.
God, why can't we just have the series be a documentary?
We would be done by, we typically were done in March. We'd probably be done by December if we shot.
Well, what if we honor it and have to show the documentary? Like, we're going to be the first show that actually shows the documentary.
Well, by the way, not to be, again, you got to forgive me. It's my commentary. I get to sound like a jaded, bitter, competitive dick, but and pat myself in the back. But also, that's the thing. Our documentary really is a documentary. You know who's shooting it and why. Yeah. Anyways, I talked over some great Joel McHale acting, which so often doesn't even look like acting, because Pierce drops the father bomb and Jeff's face doesn't even change.
Actually, the hardest scene the hardest scene we've ever cut out of the show was some of the best acting Joel's ever done.
I think it's in the deleted scenes.
There's a
incredible
monologue.
scene.
The speech where, like, you want me to say an emotional
the talking head that happens right after you come out, where there's a scene where Abed is trying to draw Jeff out, like trying to have him comment. And I thought it was great because it sort of puts the documentarian on blast for being this horrible voyeur.
This is my favorite dialogue of the whole.
Oh, yes. Oh, the dads. We got questions about this on Twitter. So I only slept, the all-nighter that we rewrote this episode on, I only slept for 1 hour that whole night. And during this hour, everyone else wrote this scene, and I was so upset when I came back because it's brilliant. This dad's back and forth, Britta.
It probably took about 5 minutes to write, is the thing. Like, that's like writing. The good stuff happens as a result of 24 hours of constipation, but then the actual that when you start typing to when you're finished, it's 5 minutes. It's like you're looking and looking and looking and looking, and then you go, okay, let's just do this, and you just riff it. And
it sounds like, I was going to say, it sounds like a riff between you and McKenna in the writers' room.
Yeah, it's just it's just us. I'll sit at the keyboard, and then there's monitors for all the writers to see, and we just try to make them laugh. At typing stuff, I don't say anything out loud. I don't pitch it. I just type it, and then someone throws something else out.
I took that sheet and I kept showing it to people. I was like, look at this dialogue that I get to say. Look at this. I was like, call my friends. I'm like, I'm going to read this to you.
It's an interesting departure because all of a sudden, defiant Britta, our politically active, Britta, she's reflexively homophobic. And she's you're
Doesn't
dumb
even
gay
know
dad.
it.
Like as soon as she's competing with Jeff, she's trying to hit him by saying his dad's gay. And that's what I love about Britta is that she's more like us than anybody underneath, and she's just got this thin veneer of outrage.
This is another nod to
This
Glover.
thing was just.
I said to him, I'm going to take the camera, I'm going to go outside this room, and I just want you to do whatever happens.
There's a sadness to
meltdown.
doing an episode like this, and then
Not
going
doing
back to the old.
Yeah.
But this when he comes up to the window and screams, when it extends, he runs his hands over the blinds and closes them all, and it was brilliant. It
And
was so
his
funny.
look there is. And then LeVar Burton
Oh, it was
Alright, so-
amazing.
Just
killing
I
it.
think it's coming up. Like, here's what's brilliant about there's the horrible evil genius that I've handed down to my writing staff, even to my youngest writer, Yvette Nicole Brown, an unrepentant, unredemptive narcissist wrapped in sweet Keebler clothing. She this is classic Yvette. She emails Megan the night of the table read before we shoot. And because she knows Megan's the writer on the episode, and her email is, my dear sweet genius writer, do I have to be the only actor in the episode without a talking head? Could I please have a talking head in your genius episode? Like totally just like, and it's like what I've told the writers is when that happens, when you feel something like it's not, don't then just bottle it down and do your job in spite of it. Like that's your job. So we always talk about that, and so like. I didn't have any hand in this. I saw that email and I was like, wow. And then I think it was McKenna and you.
He had the idea to add that talking head. And when I saw the pages come down to set,
Who
I
wrote
remember,
that? Was just
it was
that
Chris,
scene is
Chris
amazing.
wrote that, and then when the pages came down, and then that day, the end of shooting, Yvette came up and said, "Did anyone write me a talking head?" And I go, "Yeah, I think you got one." And I just split to the lot because I was like, "Oh God, I don't know how to."
But the great thing about actors and writers is there is writers, right? The first thing a writer thinks is, "Oh no, she's gonna hate that." She's an actor. She loves it. She doesn't care.
And
Everyone's
she
happy.
did a great job. She was really funny in that moment.
As long as there's a
This-
mind fuck going on, the writer's happy, and as long as there's more lines, the actor's happy.
This Donald Glover amazing in these scenes with LeVar Burton.
When he says "set your phasers to love,"
He ad-libbed that. Set your phasers to love
I think we
me.
did like 6 takes and he did a different joke at the end of every take.
Yeah, it was
and the great thing
really-
about Donald that's fascinating is I never give him time to think of the joke. We just go right back into it, and
Go,
while he's in the middle of
Yeah.
singing the song, he comes up with a joke he's going to say at the end of the scene.
Genius.
People had asked on Twitter too about LeVar Burton and how LeVar Burton came about and like how he was on set. We originally were going to have Troy ask for like a hot lady or something, and then we just were kind of like, I don't care, like that's not really interesting. And then somebody had thrown out, I don't even know how, that LeVar Burton, and I used to watch a ton of Reading Rainbow, loved LeVar Burton and thought it was so much more interesting of Troy's character that he would be unable to talk around an idol like that. And then LeVar came onto set and he was just game for anything. People asked like, do we cut a lot of Kunta Kinte jokes out of the draft? And in fact, like we had that one of Britta saying bounce a check to Kunta Kinte. And then at the end, he was supposed to say in the script it was more fish for LeVar. And he just said the first take, more fish for Kunta, and I just sat back and said, "Hey, if I can get Kunta, I'll just take it."
It's such a weird thing because it's Generation X versus Baby Boomer. Like LeVar played Kunta Kinte in Roots. I'm a child of that generation. When I hear the words Kunta Kinte, I cringe because of playground talk and stuff. It's like it was so much more a part of racist jokes than it was a part of an awakening of society or anything. And so I'm endlessly fascinated by stuff like that. That LeVar Burton doesn't think Kunta Kinte is a dirty word, and I do.
But he
Oh,
was
here it
like-
is. Here's
Oh,
the-
yeah. She did it so good too, and I had to give her a note, which made me feel like even worse. That I was like, "Hey, I've got a note on your punishment. Just if you could tell." It was awful, but this is great because you get to see Danny. This is the only other time, other than his Talking Heads, you get to see Danny pop in, and she's clearly stolen the camera from him.
Just like set it up and like hiding in a closet.
And just wants to talk about herself.
Here's another great Joel McHale speech. This was written by Dan and probably Chris. This FX2, the deadly art of illusion. Whole take here.
Oh yeah, this is like me and McKenna often our third acts, our resolutions. Like I don't there's nothing to my story model that says you have to know your endings before you move on to the script, because a third acts just need to sort of surprise you, and so this is the moment of like what do we do? And it was just like, well, what if, I don't know, like what if you do what you're not supposed to do? Just spill the beans. Just have the actor be ahead of the game. I have the hero just go, you better not be pulling some shit because I'm gonna beat your ass. Right. And then watching him scramble to keep it together.
I just like how he believes it could be his father.
Right.
So
and
it's
that's the inversion of it. Yeah. Is that he's sitting there warning him because what he's really saying is, it better be my dad. I really want it to be, and I really expect it to be.
And he's going over all the scenarios that could,
And then the funny mirror to that is when you're on the phone and he says, "This is your father," and you can just tell immediately, Jeff, the ruse is up immediately when he starts talking.
Like, I'm gonna kill you now. Murder.
LeVar was really impressed that I put in a line about Rebop, one of his old shows. He was like, "You used to watch Rebop?" And I said, "No, I got the joke first, and then I went to your IMDb page and found." I feel bad.
But this is a great exchange. Watch Britta, whose circuitry is unwired.
Here.
That's her reacting inappropriately. As Annie points out, like something scarred her, rewired her circuit board, and she doesn't react appropriately. So that's why she's the robot in the Christmas episode. And that's, she has these behaviors that don't. There's overlap there with her and Abed.
And has there ever been two women on television as funny and as beautiful as Allison and Gillian? The combo in the same show? Thank you. No, there has never been. Ever.
This is very thinly veiled Paramount lot. Like everybody, all of my friends that are actors that live in LA, anyone like they always laugh at this because they're like, okay, hospital.
It's clearly on the lot.
But honestly,
this was a really fun day of shooting too, because we had stunt work and we had Joel chasing a car, and he really got into it. It was just took off full speed booking after this car. This is the one scene that I remember. I had to put my hand over my mouth from laughing and thinking I would screw up the take. It was so funny.
I was so mad.
Just the perfect.
And then you hear his voice
reaction.
no, stop, don't come any closer for some reason.
I love the line, "You look too much like your mother," because it's a slight dig. It's just the perfect. This scene now, we originally had the idea that the car would pull up and there would be no one in it, and it just sort of seemed like, I think even to the table read, that might have been the idea. And then we just I think Chris or somebody threw out this idea of what if it's Chevy and he's just throwing together this last minute sort of, I'm just going to wave from the car thing, and then this all came out of it.
Chevy was a real sport here. We dragged him out of this car 2 or 3 times.
He was having a great time.
It
looks pretty physical for...
We banged his head a couple times.
Yeah, I just saw his head get banged.
Yeah, he was a really good sport.
Stuff gets a lot more intimate when you're doing the mockumentary. It's easier when I operate because it's a very subjective point of view with the camera. So it's about what you're trying to
Joel mounting Chevy
pick
there.
off with the performance. So you want things to feel as realistic as possible. And Chevy was game here.
I love this that this is Chevy. This is my definition of him redeeming himself, is just admitting, his vulnerability, his weakness, his desires. But it's not enough for people, I guess. But Jeff, explains it to him. I guess you're right. What'd you say? It's such classic human behavior. I don't. That's not in the script. It's just you guys made that up. But
no, you guys were in the moment. That's
I was like, I'm gonna kill him.
Yeah, this whole episode had this feel we were just sort of doing everything on the fly, and this. I remember I handed this monologue to Joel that I hand wrote on a piece of paper and was like, "Hey, we're doing this next." There's no scene number
it came
for
out
it.
of
I just felt like there needed to be a resolution to his father, a moment where he talks about where he unites Pierce and his father.
This is my fault. I think this is a little overwritten. I didn't need to go quite as far spoon feeding this. I don't know. I was trying to make this connection happen.
Oh, I love this moment.
No, I love that. I love
Thanks, guys. Good choice.
No, it was.
Good job, DH.
But I just like the idea of teeing up the idea that this sort of granddaughter thing, because what I saw in the drug play episode is that surprisingly enough, him being sweet to Annie, it plays, it works. A lot of times Chevy will undercut it, or the writers will undercut it, but him being fatherly or grandfatherly to her, It doesn't feel ironic or lecherous or anything. It feels really tender, and I just wanted to keep that going. I think that, like, secretly he actually does have a favorite, and it's her.
It's interesting. Is there a lot of comparisons to Modern Family or The Office or Parks and Recs? But this episode is actually almost the identical execution, same amount of cameras and the same style that we used for the pilot of Arrested Development.
Oh.
Well, that's the thing. Like Sprung edited Arrested, right?
Yeah.
That's why I'm an asshole in the edit bay, because Arrested is shot very, very efficiently and cool and, like, makes the mockumentary thing work. It's like a weird departure for me to be going, yeah, I don't like that jump cut. And even the editors are going like, yeah, but this is how it was shot this way and stuff. And I'm like, no. We gotta, like, it's gotta look like a one-act play. And it's been a tough road sometimes, like, making that marriage work.
Here's Kunta.
And then him
the
singing
greatest
this song.
Jesus.
Donald. I told, when I was getting ready to write this episode, because I've known Donald for a while, and I texted him and said, "You're not.
So great.
There's barely any dialogue for you in my next episode. I think it's going to be one of your best." And it was great.
There was.
I hope we can have him back. I don't know why
Yeah,
we would,
right?
but
If
Star
Donald
Trek
gets
episode.
laryngitis, you
Yeah.
just bring him back. Don't want to say a word.